We can't have a lot of people who are not able to afford college. We have to make that available for everybody.
Let's talk about that and bring in two of our guests here for more on rising student debt and the broader state of education are Aaron Smith of the Young Invincibles and Jamai Belivin of Innovate-Educate. So I know you guys yesterday hosted the first annual STEM Solutions Youth Summit in Dallas. And STEM, it should be pointed out, stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. I trust it was a successful event. Tell me, why in the United States, where we are 25th in the world in math and 17th in science, why can't we get competitive? Either one of you, feel free to answer.
I'll take it. So, I mean, I think what you all are talking about, the conversation we came in on, is exactly that. There's a mismatch between the cost of education, what education will get you as a job, and what skills are needed for employability. And so we talked about that at the U.S. News and World Report Summit. The Youth Summit really focused on what is the youth voice about, and I'll let Aaron speak to that.
Yeah,
well,
go ahead, Aaron.
I think the Youth Summit... The Youth Summit yesterday was a big success because we were listening to young people themselves, and I think it's important to say that this vote today on the student loan interest rates was a huge win for students and their families. Affects over 7 million students, and you know, it shows the power young people can have in moving this political process that so often is, you know, stagnant and avoids any change. And we saw the bipartisan support that's out there. Now, you guys were pointing out the fact that we need more comprehensive solutions to address the cost of college and to address student debt. And you know, young people have to be at the table to craft those solutions, because we're going to have, you know, a big stake. It's our future.
Well, I came across an interesting story recently. New York City is a booming tech sector. Apparently, it's second only to Silicon Valley now. And since 2007, we've had 500 new tech companies in the New York City area. However, we're having to look outside of New York City and sometimes outside of the U.S. for talent. There isn't enough good, skilled tech talent locally. And Mike Bloomberg, our mayor here, was addressing that. And I want to put his quote up on the screen. He said, the fact that New York startup companies are having to go around the country and around the world to find talent tells you that it has a lot more to do with our public school system and our universities. We have great engineering schools. We just don't have enough of them. So is that the national problem, essentially?
So I think that it unfortunately goes beyond that, because I think that we have to look at, you know, 72%, somewhere around 70% of all college entrance students have to work while they're in school. So you've got to look at the affordability of higher education, whether 2-year or 4-year. And then you have to say, okay, if they have to work while they're in school, how are we going to get them educated to be part of that skilled workforce? And there's not a lot of opportunities to work while in school. So there's a lot of different pieces of the puzzle to create that pipeline. That's some of the things we talked about. It's a lot of work to do. I think Mayor Bloomberg is doing amazing work creating the tech mecca in New York City. I think STEM is very important to New York City, science, technology, engineering, and math. But 90% of all jobs in the country require STEM skills, and we definitely have a skill gap. So we have to look at the gap, and you know, there's not enough people going to higher education because of the affordability. So what other potential employment opportunities based on skills exist or can exist? And we're working on some at Innovate-Educate to really say, I'm a skilled worker, I need employability, and then I'll get my education while I'm working. That's where I think we are.
You know, Aaron, I just wanted to ask you, you mentioned a minute ago about sort of the political power of students, and it is striking when you look at the student loan issue right now, how this was sort of a no-brainer in the end for both parties. They had to get behind this. But, you know, like I was saying earlier, when you look at the state level, you know, I've seen these fights play out in a number of states through the years, and it strikes me how powerless students are. You know, when budget cuts get proposed at the state level, there's invariably some kind of protest from students, and I'm just struck that they don't seem to have much clout, whether it's through voting, whether it's through, you know, campaign donations, all the sort of traditional levers of power. You know, what can students do at the state level when the budget at their state university, state college is threatened? Anything they can do to stop that from happening?
Well, first off, let me say, it wasn't inevitable that Congress was going to make sure the interest rates stayed where they were. The House GOP budget actually assumed that the interest rates would double. So we went from that scenario to one now where students are seeing a big victory. And you're absolutely right. We're seeing, the tuition in public universities around the country going up 8% every year. We're seeing major cuts, particularly places like community colleges that are a backbone of our education system. And there is quite a bit of student organizing out there. There's some terrific groups that are working in states, but we can do a lot more. We need to make our voices heard. We heard recently this story at UVA, and the students were very involved in making their voices heard there. And I think the business community and the student voices can actually work together because this is in the interest not only of students and their families, but also our broader economy. So when states are looking at their budgets next year, I think it's really a question of priorities. Are you going to invest in the future of your state and your future competitiveness? Are you going to give that voice to students in the process? And it's the responsibility both of the states and our political leaders, but also students themselves to be involved.
That's a great
point. And I think Aaron hit it on the end. I think on the business side, I really agree with that. So for quite a while, higher education's been making their budget their increases, working with their states, working with their legislators. Business needs the skilled workforce.
Sure. And
every time those rates go up, it hurts their workforce. So I think the young voice partnering with the businesses in those states can really make an impact on where things have to go in higher education.
Well, you guys are doing some great work. We want to thank you for joining us. Our thanks to Aaron Smith and Jamai Blivin.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, Colorado is under a disaster declaration. President Obama is there surveying the wildfire damage. We'll bring you his remarks after this.